The ground trembled beneath her feet as the dark rift tore open, a swirling vortex of flames and shadow devouring everything in its path. California stood at the edge, her heart pounding as her power surged, unpredictable and wild, threatening to consume her entire being. Lucian reached out, but the moment their hands touched, the rift yanked her in, pulling her toward an abyss of endless darkness. As her world twisted and spiraled, she could hear the vampire emperor's voice echo in her mind, a promise that would haunt her forever. "You are mine, and this world will burn with you at my side." With every ounce of strength, she fought to break free, but the darkness was stronger, and the curse had already begun. Before we dive into this, let us know, what time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below, we'd love to hear from you. The city of San Francisco stood under a haunting sky, a blood-red moon casting its terrifying glow across the skyline. People moved through the streets, unaware of the danger lurking just beyond their sight. In a narrow alleyway, California, a beautiful young woman with long dark hair and bright blue eyes, found herself walking alone after a late-night painting session at the beach. As she strolled deeper into the shadowed alley, she felt a presence, a chill running down her spine. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She wasn't alone. Without warning, a figure emerged from the darkness, tall, regal, with eyes glowing like molten gold. His gaze locked onto hers, a force she couldn't escape. Lucian, the vampire, had been waiting for her. "You are mine," he whispered, a strange and dangerous promise in his voice, before his cold, inhuman hand clamped over her mouth. His fangs pierced her skin. As her vision blurred and her world spun, she felt both fear and an undeniable pull toward him, a bond she couldn't understand, but one that felt destined. In the darkness, his voice murmured, "I've waited centuries for you, California." The next morning, California woke in her bed, shaken and confused. The memory of the night haunted her, but she dismissed it as just a nightmare. She was an artist, a free spirit, deeply connected to the world around her. She painted, she surfed, she lived her life as she always had. There was no room for superstition, for things like vampires. She met with her best friend Lena, a lively and quirky woman who loved to dabble in the supernatural. Lena was convinced the night California had experienced was no coincidence. "California, listen to me," Lena said, eyes wide with excitement. "You've met him, haven't you? The vampire, the one who haunts this city." California laughed nervously, not wanting to admit that Lena might be right. "Vampires? Seriously, Lena? I'm not some supernatural believer." But the thoughts of the mysterious figure who had saved her from the darkness wouldn't leave her mind. The more she tried to push him away, the stronger the pull became. That night, she stood in front of her easel, painting the waves as they crashed on the beach, but her mind wasn't focused on the ocean. She felt him again. Lucian. His presence lingered like a shadow, his gaze watching her, even though she couldn't see him. Suddenly, the temperature dropped. A chill swept over her, and before she could turn around, his voice cut through the air. "I told you," Lucian said, stepping into the light, his eyes glowing with hunger and longing. "I've waited for you, California." California's heart raced as she faced him again, the man who was not a man at all. He was everything her mind screamed to fear, yet everything her heart whispered to embrace. You're real?" she stammered, eyes searching him for any sign of humanity. Lucian's gaze softened, but there was no denying the ferocity lurking beneath the surface. "I am real, California, and you're in danger now. The world I come from, it's dark, dangerous, and it's not just me who has been waiting for you." A cold shiver ran down her spine as his words sunk in. He wasn't the only one who knew about her. Lucian's eyes darkened as he took a step closer. "They're coming for you. Vampire hunters. They've been tracking me for years. They'll stop at nothing to kill us both." Before California could respond, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The shadows that surrounded them seemed to shift, as though alive with a presence more terrifying than anything she could imagine. A vampire hunter, tall and built like a warrior, appeared from the darkness. "Lucian," the man growled, "you've crossed the line. She belongs to the hunters now." With lightning speed, the hunter lunged at Lucian, but Lucian was faster. The two collided, a violent clash that sent sparks flying into the night. California watched in horror as the fight escalated, fangs bared, claws outstretched. It wasn't just a battle of strength. It was a war between their worlds. "Run, California," Lucian hissed as he drove the hunter back. "Go, they'll come for you next." California fled into the night, the sound of her pounding heart almost drowning out the chaos behind her. She didn't understand what was happening, how her life had shifted from normal to nightmare in a single moment. As she ran, memories of the hunter's warning echoed in her mind. She belongs to the hunters now. What did that even mean? Why her? Why had Lucian claimed her as his? The night air grew colder, and the city around her became a labyrinth of shadows. She reached her apartment but barely had time to lock the door before there was a sharp knock at the door. "California," a voice called softly through the wood. "You're not safe here." She froze, recognizing the voice. Lucian. But when she opened the door, it wasn't Lucian who stood there. It was another hunter, his eyes cold and merciless. Behind him, more figures emerged from the shadows, vampire hunters, surrounding her apartment, preparing to take her. "Please don't," she begged, her voice trembling. "I don't understand. What do you want with me?" "You're the key to ending this war, California," the hunter said. "You're a descendant of both vampires and humans. They'll use you to unlock the ancient bloodline. We cannot allow that." Lucian appeared in the doorway, just as the first hunter lunged at California. He moved with blinding speed, his strength overwhelming. Fangs bared, he fought off the hunters one by one. Blood spilled, and the sound of bone crunching echoed through the room as the battle grew more violent. "No!" California screamed, throwing herself between them. "Stop, please!" Lucian halted, his gaze filled with anguish. "I can't let them take you, California. We're running out of time." But California wasn't afraid anymore. In this moment, she understood. She wasn't just a bystander, she was part of this world now, Lucian's world. The war was her war. "I will fight with you, Lucian," she said, her voice steady, a newfound resolve in her eyes. "I won't let them take you." The two of them fought together, lover and vampire, against the hunters who sought to tear them apart. The room became a battlefield of desperation, blood, and violence. But Lucian and California's bond was stronger than any force that threatened them. In the aftermath of the battle, the apartment lay in ruins. The hunters were defeated, but it wasn't over. Lucian knew that this was just the beginning. More would come, stronger, more ruthless, with one goal: to destroy him and take California. "We have to leave. Now," Lucian said, pulling California into his arms as the sounds of reinforcements echoed in the distance. "They'll never stop coming. We'll have to move to the underground. The vampire lord will protect us." California nodded, a fierce determination in her eyes. "I'm not going anywhere without you." Together, they disappeared into the shadows, leaving the city that had been their home. The road ahead would be treacherous, filled with monsters, hunters, and ancient vampires. But California knew one thing for certain: she would never leave Lucian. Their love was fate, a bond that could not be broken, even in the face of terror. The city became a battleground as California and Lucian went on the run. They sought refuge in dark corners, hidden from both hunters and vampires alike, but the blood-red moon hung above them, a reminder that their love was a ticking time bomb. One night, as they made their way through an abandoned church, the worst happened. The vampire lord, a creature of immense power, appeared before them, a towering figure dressed in black robes. His eyes gleamed with malicious intent. "You think you can escape, Lucian?" the vampire lord sneered. "California is mine. I've waited centuries to find her. She will open the portal, and all of you will bow to me." Lucian stepped forward, his eyes blazing with fury. "You will never have her." The final battle was brutal. The vampire lord's power was overwhelming, but Lucian and California fought side by side. Blood splattered across the stone floors as swords clashed, claws slashed, and powers collided. In a final act of desperation, the vampire lord lunged at California, but Lucian was faster, his fangs sinking deep into the lord's neck. With a roar, he tore him apart. California stood over the remains of their enemy, breathing heavily, the weight of the battle settling in. "We did it," Lucian whispered, taking her hand. But as he looked into her eyes, he knew their fight wasn't over. The hunters were still out there, and the war was far from won. The world was on fire. California and Lucian ran through the dense, fog-covered forest. the sound of their pursuers' footsteps echoing in the distance. Their hearts beat in sync, both knowing that the night was far from over. Lucian glanced over his shoulder. The vampire hunters were relentless, their thirst for vengeance palpable. But something worse lingered in the air. As they reached a clearing, the ground beneath them cracked open, and from the shadows, something far older and far more dangerous stirred. The vampire lord's words echoed in California's mind. California will open the portal. She will bring forth the end of everything you know. As Lucian pulled her toward the edge of the clearing, the air around them grew colder. They weren't just being hunted by hunters. They were being hunted by fate. Days passed since the violent battle in the church. California and Lucian had found refuge in a hidden underground lair, deep within the mountains, where the remnants of the vampire clans resided. They were safe, for now. California, though shaken, was adapting to her new life. She was learning the dark world Lucian belonged to, its history, its dangers, and the ancient vampire lords who ruled over them all. Lucian, too, was beginning to open up, revealing the painful truths of his past, how he had been born centuries ago, cursed to live forever, searching for his soulmate who was always just out of reach, until now. Their time together was both bitter and sweet. Despite the constant threat of death, they shared tender moments, long conversations under the starry sky, stolen kisses, and the warmth of their touch. But the danger never ceased to linger. We can never stop running, can we? California asked one night, sitting beside Lucian in the flickering candlelight. The silence between them was heavy, both aware that their lives would never be normal again. Lucian's gaze darkened. No, California, but as long as we're together, I'll keep fighting. I won't let them take you from me. But even as he said this, a feeling of dread washed over him. He could feel the dark forces closing in, even here in the heart of the mountains. He knew that the hunters weren't the only threat they had to face. Their safe haven didn't last long. One night, as they were preparing to leave the lair and move deeper into hiding, a new group of vampires appeared. They were led by Raphael, a tall, striking vampire with an air of arrogance. His eyes gleamed with power and menace, and his presence alone sent a chill through the air. "We have been searching for you, Lucian," Raphael's voice echoed in the underground cavern. "You think you can escape the ancient bloodlines' reach? You're wrong." Lucian stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "You've come for her, haven't you? What do you want with California?" Raphael's lips curled into a cruel smile. "She's a part of something much bigger than both of us. She is the key to awakening the vampire emperor." California felt a chill creep over her. "The vampire emperor?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Who is that?" "The one who will rule over all vampires." Raphael explained. "He has been sleeping for centuries, and California," he glanced at her with predatory intent, "she will awaken him." Lucian's expression hardened, and he stepped protectively in front of California. "You won't get her, Raphael. I won't let you." But Raphael just laughed. "You are weak, Lucian. You always have been. This war was never about you. It's about the future of our kind, and California is the key." With that, Raphael and his followers attacked. The underground lair exploded into chaos. California fought back with all her strength, though she was unprepared for the brutal violence of the vampire war. Lucian fought fiercely beside her, but the battle was far from over. They were outnumbered, and worse yet, they were caught in the middle of a war they didn't understand. Hours passed before the battle subsided. Lucian and California were battered, bloodied, but alive. They had managed to escape, but the price was high. The vampire clans that had once kept their distance now considered them enemies. The vampire emperor's awakening was inevitable. Raphael was merely the first of many who would come for her. In the dead of night, as they made their way through the mountains, Lucian could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The vampire emperor, an ancient being whose power was legendary, was about to return, and with him, chaos would reign. "We can't outrun this forever," California said, her voice low and heavy with the burden of their situation. Lucian took her hand, his grip tight. "I won't let them take you, California. We'll fight this together." But even as he spoke those words, he knew there was a limit to how much they could withstand. The vampire hunters, led by the relentless Julian and Sarah, had caught wind of the attack and were closing in. And there was something else lurking in the shadows, something darker, older, and more dangerous than anything they had faced before. As days passed, their movements became more desperate. The threat of the vampire emperor's awakening loomed over them like a storm cloud, and the hunters were always just a step behind. Julian and Sarah, fierce and skilled vampire hunters, were relentless in their pursuit, their hatred for Lucian burning deep. "There's no place for you in this world anymore, Lucian," Julian spat one night, cornering them in an abandoned cabin deep in the forest. "You're an abomination, and we'll rid the world of you." Sarah, her eyes cold as ice, added, "Your kind will fall, and we will be the ones to make sure of it." Lucian stood tall, his fangs bared. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. If you think you're saving this world, you're wrong. You're all pawns in a game far bigger than you realize." California stood by his side, feeling the weight of his words. She had seen the truth in his eyes, the truth that their love was the key to something far more dangerous than either of them could comprehend. Julian lunged, his silver-coated blade aimed directly at Lucian. With lightning speed, Lucian grabbed his arm and twisted, breaking the hunter's wrist. The battle that ensued was fierce. Sarah's stake nearly pierced California's heart, but Lucian's speed saved her at the last moment. "We're not done yet," Lucian hissed as he sent Sarah flying against a tree. "But this war is just beginning." Just as they thought they had won, the ground beneath them began to shake. From the trees, the vampire emperor's army emerged, led by Raphael and the ancient being himself. The emperor, an immense, terrifying creature cloaked in shadows with eyes that glowed like molten lava. His presence was suffocating, like the earth itself was bowing to him. "This ends tonight," the vampire emperor said, his voice rumbling like thunder. "California belongs to me." Lucian, standing firm, took a step forward. "I'll never let you have her." The battle between Lucian and the vampire emperor's forces was apocalyptic. It was not just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the very soul of the world. Vampires clashed against humans, and the night sky itself seemed to tremble with each blow. California, caught in the chaos, did the only thing she could do. She tapped into the dark power within her, the power the vampire emperor wanted to awaken. With a scream of defiance, California released her power, a blast of energy so intense it sent shockwaves through the battle. The vampires faltered, and the ground trembled as if the earth itself was rebelling. "Lucian, we can do this," she whispered. Her eyes locked on his. Together. As the final blow was struck and the vampire emperor fell, California stood tall beside Lucian, both of them battered but alive. But they knew this victory was only temporary. The war had only just begun. California's breath came in ragged gasps as she and Lucian stumbled through the dense forest, the sounds of pursuit growing louder with each passing moment. The battle with the vampire emperor had left them weakened, but there was no time to rest. Raphael was still out there, and worse, the hunters had reappeared, relentless in their pursuit. As they ran, Lucian's grip tightened around her wrist. "We need to get to the old temple," he whispered urgently, his eyes scanning the shadows. "It's the only place we'll be safe." But before they could move, a blood-curdling screech pierced the air. From the darkness of the trees, a massive shadow emerged, a winged beast, its eyes glowing with the fire of hell. It screeched again, shaking the earth beneath them. "Lucian!" California gasped, her voice trembling. "What is that?" "The Harbinger," Lucian muttered. "An ancient creature sent to bring about the fall of the vampire clans. We've awakened it." With that, the creature lunged at them, its claws slashing the air as the world around them descended into chaos. After the disastrous battle with the vampire emperor and the aftermath of that horrific night, California and Lucian had hoped for a brief reprieve. But fate was not on their side. They were still being hunted, not only by the vampire lord's army, but now by a far more terrifying force, the Harbinger, an ancient creature that fed on both vampire and human blood, and whose existence was tied to the curse that plagued Lucian's bloodline. The old temple that Lucian spoke of was their only hope, a place forgotten by time, deep within the mountains, where the last remnants of vampire lore were hidden. But as they made their way through the thick woods, their every step was pursued by the relentless roar of the Harbinger and the distant, haunting sound of vampire hunters closing in. California felt the weight of the journey pressing on her chest. Every night, every moment they spent running, it felt like they were losing something precious. Time, hope, and perhaps even each other. But still, they ran, for there was no other choice. Lucian, California began one night, her voice faint with worry. Are we really going to make it? Lucian didn't meet her gaze, his eyes always looking ahead, filled with determination. But California saw the flicker of doubt there. I don't know, but I swear, California, I'll protect you. Days turned into weeks, and the tension between them grew, not from a lack of love, but from the weight of the danger closing in. The vampire hunters were more than just skilled fighters. They were equipped with ancient weapons, forged to kill vampires. Julian and Sarah, the two hunters who had tracked them relentlessly, were becoming increasingly dangerous. Every time they thought they had escaped, the hunters found them again, like shadows in the night. I thought we lost them for good, California whispered one night, as they hid in a secluded cave, deep in the mountains. Lucian's expression was grim as he listened to the distant sound of the hunters' voices, growing nearer. They'll never stop. They think you're the key to ending everything, to stopping the curse. But I don't want that, California said, her voice breaking. I don't want any of this. I just want to be free, to be with you. But every day, I feel like we're drowning. Lucian reached out to touch her face, brushing her hair from her eyes. I'll make sure we're free, California, no matter the cost. But the words didn't bring her comfort. The more time they spent running, the more California began to question everything. Was she truly meant for this world? Could her love for Lucian ever be enough to defeat the ancient forces chasing them? Would they ever be free? The Harbinger's roar echoed through the forest like a monstrous wave, and suddenly they were surrounded. The creature's massive wings beat against the air, sending gusts of wind so strong that trees were torn from the ground. We need to move now, Lucian shouted, grabbing her by the arm and pulling her into motion. But it was too late. The Harbinger was on them in an instant, its fiery eyes locked onto California, its massive claws aimed at her throat. Lucian moved to intercept, but the creature was faster. In a blinding moment, its claws slashed across Lucian's chest, sending him crashing into the trees with a roar of pain. Lucian! California screamed, rushing to his side, but the Harbinger had already turned its gaze back to her. It was hungry, its twisted smile showing rows of sharp, serrated teeth. And then, just as the beast lunged for California, a bright flash of light illuminated the night. Step away from her, demon. A voice boomed. From the shadows emerged Raphael, the vampire prince, the very same vampire who had been hunting them all along. But this time, his aura was different. There was a dark power emanating from him, and at his side was a new figure, a woman, draped in blood-red robes, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly fire. It's not too late to join us, Lucian, Raphael said, his voice tinged with malice. The time for running is over. You've awakened the Harbinger, and now you will witness the end of your kind. California watched in disbelief as the Harbinger hesitated, eyeing Raphael and the woman beside him. The tension between them was palpable, the creature torn between its hunger for California and the orders it had received. Why are you helping them? California demanded, her voice shaking with fear and anger. Raphael smirked. Helping? No, dear, I'm claiming what's mine. Lucian's bloodline was always meant to serve the vampire emperor, but you, he took a step closer, his eyes never leaving her. You are the key to his rebirth. You are the one who will awaken him fully. Lucian stirred, his bloodied chest heaving as he struggled to rise. No, Raphael, you won't control her, not like this. But Raphael's laugh echoed through the clearing. It's already done, and soon the world will fall to darkness. The woman beside him raised her hand, and with a chilling incantation, the Harbinger suddenly lunged forward. But before it could reach its target, the ground beneath them began to tremble, and the air turned black with a malevolent force. Lucian's eyes widened with realization. California, you need to run. The portal, it's opening. The ground shook violently, and the very earth seemed to rip apart as the portal to the vampire emperor's domain began to open. The Harbinger and Raphael's forces rushed forward, their desire for California stronger than ever, but Lucian threw himself in front of her. Go, California, run! he cried, his voice ragged. But before she could move, the sky darkened further, and the unmistakable sound of vampire hunters' blades echoed through the trees. Julian and Sarah had arrived. The clash of steel filled the air as the vampire hunters fought off Raphael's forces. It was a brutal battle, with no clear victor in sight. And in the chaos, California's mind raced. There was only one thing she could do. She stepped toward the portal, her body shaking, her heart torn between love and duty. "California, no!" Lucian shouted, struggling to rise. "Don't do this. You can't open it. It will destroy everything." But it was too late. California reached out, her bloodlines' power surging within her, calling to the portal. The ground cracked wide open, the sky tore apart. As the portal expanded, an eerie red glow filled the night sky, and a deafening roar shook the forest. From the depths of the portal, the vampire emperor's voice boomed. "I am awake, and all who stand before me shall fall." California's heart raced in her chest. As she reached for Lucian, her world spun. Was she the key to the destruction of everything? The vampire emperor was no longer just a legend. "Lucian!" she screamed, but before she could reach him, the portal sucked her in, and then everything went dark. The world around California collapsed into darkness as she was sucked into the swirling abyss of the portal. Every muscle in her body screamed, and yet she felt no pain, only an overwhelming sense of weightlessness. She was falling, spiraling through time and space, but there was no light, no land, just the vast expanse of nothingness. As her eyes closed in exhaustion, a voice echoed in the dark, a low and chilling whisper that seemed to reverberate in her very soul. "You will open the gates to your demise." The words clung to her, wrapping themselves around her heart like chains. She gasped for breath, panic seizing her as she felt herself being pulled into an abyss far worse than anything she had ever known. And then, in the distance, she saw it, the vampire emperor. His eyes gleamed red as he emerged from the darkness, towering over her, his ancient and malevolent power palpable. "You are mine, California," he purred, his voice a soft caress of death. "Together, we will end the world." Lucian stood at the edge of the portal, his chest heaving from the battle they had just fought. His eyes were wide with horror as he watched California disappear into the rift. "No," he screamed, reaching out in vain as the portal sucked her into the dark void. With a final anguished cry, Lucian fell to his knees, fists slamming into the ground. California, his love, his soulmate, had been taken. The vampire emperor had awakened. The curse was real, and it was more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. "Lucian, we have to move now," a voice called behind him. Lucian turned to find Raphael, standing with the woman who had helped unleash the emperor. The woman's eyes burned with a fiery, otherworldly power, and her smile sent shivers down Lucian's spine. "You're too late," Raphael sneered. "The gates are open, the emperor is awake, and there's no stopping him now." Lucian's jaw tightened. "I will stop him," he growled, "and I will get California back." Raphael laughed darkly. "You think you can defeat him? You think you can stand against what's coming? There's no place for you in this world anymore, Lucian. The vampire emperor's rule is inevitable." Lucian's fists clenched as the overwhelming weight of the situation crushed him. But as the woman beside Raphael spoke, her words were like a cold whisper against his ear. "You don't understand," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "California is the key to his power. She will be the one to unlock the curse. Once she completes the ritual, the world will fall to him." "No," Lucian spat, his eyes wild with fear. "No, I won't let her become a pawn in your sick game." "You have no choice," Raphael said, stepping forward. "If you want to save her, you'll have to join us." The realization struck Lucian like a thunderbolt. He was running out of time. California was deep in the heart of the vampire emperor's realm, and without her, the world would fall to ruin. The portal to the vampire emperor's dimension was not just a physical space. It was a barrier between worlds, and the longer California stayed there, the stronger the emperor would become. She was the key to everything, and once the emperor's power reached its peak, there would be no stopping him. Lucian's thoughts raced, and then he heard it, the sound of something heavy, something dark, coming from the distance. "We need to leave. Now," the woman beside Raphael spoke again. "The emperor's army is on the move." Lucian's eyes hardened as he stood to his feet. "I'll fight them all. I'll do whatever it takes to save her." The woman smiled. Foolish, but brave. With no more words, they left the cave. Lucian's thoughts remained fixed on California, on how to bring her back and stop the Emperor before it was too late. But in the back of his mind, a terrible question kept repeating. Would it be too late to save her? Lucian and his uneasy allies, the woman and Raphael, journeyed toward the vampire emperor's castle, where California was being held. The air grew colder with each step, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to grow darker and more hostile. They crossed vast deserts of ash, trudged through forests of twisted trees, and finally reached the foot of the castle, an imposing black structure that stretched into the heavens. There, standing at the entrance, was Julian, the vampire hunter who had tracked Lucian for so long. But now his expression was grim, his eyes darkened with dread. "We have to hurry," Julian said, his voice urgent. "The Emperor's forces are closing in, and they'll kill us all if we don't move quickly." "Then let's go," Lucian growled, brushing past him. "We're not here to die." As they entered the castle, the air grew thick with magic, and the vampire emperor's presence loomed over them like a shadow. The walls were adorned with ancient symbols, glowing with an eerie light. The curse had already begun to unravel. Raphael's voice broke the silence. "We'll have to go deeper, past the chambers of the ancients. California is in the heart of the castle, but getting there won't be easy." Lucian's eyes hardened with resolve. "I'll get her. I don't care what it takes." The deeper they went into the castle, the more the walls seemed to close in on them, and the more dangerous the environment became. They encountered traps, hidden spikes, dark magic swirling around them like a storm. But nothing stopped them. Not the monsters lurking in the shadows, nor the dark forces that the vampire emperor controlled. They were getting closer. They finally arrived at a massive stone door, the last barrier before the inner sanctum. The ancient seals on the door pulsed with power, but Lucian didn't hesitate. He reached out, his hand touching the seal. The moment his fingers made contact, the door groaned open. Inside the room, California stood, surrounded by an ominous glowing circle of red light. She was silent, her face pale and drawn, her eyes dark as if she were lost in a trance. But when Lucian entered, her eyes flickered, focusing on him, as if seeing him for the first time. "Lucian," she whispered, her voice weak but full of longing. I don't want this. I never wanted this." Lucian rushed to her, but before he could reach her, a deep, guttural voice echoed through the room. "Lucian, you are too late," the vampire emperor's voice boomed. "She belongs to me now." California's eyes widened as if she were coming to her senses, but her hand trembled as she reached out to Lucian. "Lucian, I can't stop it. I have to finish this." Lucian's heart clenched with fear. "No, California, you can fight it. You can fight him. You're not alone." But just as he reached out to pull her into his arms, the vampire emperor appeared in front of them, towering over them with a malevolent smile. "She has already chosen." Lucian's chest tightened as he stepped forward, standing between California and the emperor. "I will never let you have her." The emperor's laugh filled the room, shaking the very foundations of the castle. "Then you will die." The room erupted into chaos. The vampire emperor's power surged, dark magic clashing with Lucian's strength. Raphael, Julian, and the mysterious woman fought the emperor's minions, but they were outmatched. Lucian's every move was a dance of desperation, trying to reach California before it was too late. Just as the emperor raised his hand, preparing to strike Lucian down, California screamed. The circle around her pulsed with power, and suddenly, her eyes turned a deep, fiery red. She was no longer just a human, nor a vampire. She had become something else. "Lucian," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion, "I am not what they want me to be." With a wave of her hand, the vampire emperor's magic shattered, and the ground beneath them cracked open. Dark flames surged as the battle reached its peak, and Lucian had to fight not only to save California, but to save the world from destruction. But just as they thought they had won, the ground beneath them began to tremble again. Something darker, something more powerful, was awakening. The ground shook violently as the dark flames from the vampire emperor's realm swirled around them, cracking the earth beneath their feet. California, her eyes glowing with an unearthly red fire, stood at the center of the storm. Her power, unfathomable, ancient, radiated through the very air. The vampire emperor's form wavered in front of her, his once immense presence now slightly diminished in the wake of her awakening power. Lucian's heart pounded as he watched her, torn between awe and terror. "California," he cried, desperate to reach her. But California didn't move, her eyes locked onto the emperor, her gaze unwavering. "I will stop this," she said, her voice both soft and commanding. "I will end this, now." The emperor smiled cruelly, his red eyes narrowing. "You think you can defeat me, child? You have no idea what you are unleashing. You are the key to my reign, and you will fall under my command." But before he could finish, a flash of light, blinding like a thunderclap, lit up the darkened chamber. Raphael and the mysterious woman stepped forward, their dark energy flaring as they tried to contain the emperor's rising power. "This is our fight now," Raphael said, his voice strained. "We'll fight together, Lucian. You have to save her." It had been days since California's unimaginable transformation. Lucian had barely spoken to her since, but he couldn't keep his eyes off her. She was still the woman he loved, but there was something different in her now. Something dark. And with that darkness came an overwhelming power, one that she couldn't fully control. Lucian didn't know what was more terrifying, the fact that California was now at the center of an ancient curse, or that he couldn't reach her. Her power was both a gift and a curse. She had the ability to end the vampire emperor's reign, but she didn't fully understand the depth of her abilities, or the consequences of using them. As they moved through the dense forest, seeking refuge from the emperor's forces, Julian and Sarah reappeared, their faces grim with a mix of frustration and determination. "We've been tracking the vampire emperor's army for days," Julian said. "They're coming, and they're stronger than ever." Lucian's gaze flickered to California, her eyes distant. "We have to get to the Obsidian Temple, the one hidden in the caverns of the Forgotten. It's the only place where California's power can be sealed before the Emperor consumes everything." Sarah crossed her arms, looking skeptical. "Are you sure? The temple's power is ancient, but we don't know what will happen if we try to seal her magic. It might kill her." Lucian clenched his fists. "I won't let her die, but we don't have a choice." California turned toward him, her voice soft but laced with an unsettling calm. "I know what I must do. We'll stop him." As they neared the caverns of the Forgotten, the air grew thick with tension. The forest around them was silent, the trees towering over them like silent watchers. Raphael and his allies had been trailing them for miles, but Lucian knew they didn't have much time. The Emperor was closing in, and with every passing minute, California's power seemed to grow stronger and more unpredictable. They entered the caverns just as the first signs of nightfall crept over the land. The walls inside the cavern were slick with moisture, the faint glow of ancient runes casting eerie shadows on the walls. The Obsidian Temple was buried deep within the caverns, hidden from the world for centuries. But before they could reach the temple's entrance, a cold wind swept through the cavern, extinguishing their torches. From the shadows, the vampire emperor's army emerged, blocking their path. "The emperor will have what is his," a deep, guttural voice rang out. From the center of the darkness, the vampire emperor himself appeared, towering over them, his presence suffocating. "It's over," he sneered. "California is mine, and with her, I will reign over all. You have no more place in this world." Lucian stepped forward, his eyes blazing. "We will not let you have her." California stood still, her power swirling around her like an unstoppable force. Her eyes flickered with both fear and determination. "I will not be your pawn," she whispered, more to herself than to the Emperor. But just as the Emperor raised his hand, preparing to strike, Raphael stepped forward, blocking his path. "You want her, Emperor? Then you'll have to get through me," Raphael said, his voice filled with cold fury. The ground beneath them trembled as dark energy surged around Raphael, his power colliding with the Emperor's. The cavern erupted into chaos. The vampire Emperor's minions charged forward, their sharp claws cutting through the air as Raphael and Lucian fought back. Julian and Sarah battled the creatures with their weapons, but they were outnumbered, their movements slowing with every strike. California felt the dark magic swirling around her. It beckoned her. It wanted her. The power was overwhelming, consuming her thoughts, but she resisted, fighting to control it. "I can't stop it," she gasped, her eyes flickering with terror. Lucian, But before she could finish, the vampire emperor's voice echoed through the cavern, deep and menacing. You will become my queen, California. Lucian turned to her, his heart racing. California, you have to fight him. You're stronger than this. But California's eyes were filled with confusion, fear, and a terrible sense of inevitability. The Emperor's power surged around her, pulling at her soul. She struggled to break free. Suddenly, the portal behind her flared to life, glowing brighter than ever. The dark energy that had been growing within her started to shift. But this time, it wasn't just the Emperor's magic. Something else was trying to break free. The ancient curse had begun to unravel, and California was at the heart of it. The battle raged on, and the room grew hotter with the intensity of the Vampire Emperor's power. The portal was widening, threatening to consume them all. I have to stop it, California whispered, her voice full of desperation. Lucian, I can't hold it back much longer. Lucian grabbed her shoulders, his eyes locking onto hers. California, listen to me. You can't let him control you. You're not his. You're mine. We can stop this together. The Emperor laughed cruelly, his eyes glowing with malice. She will never belong to you, Lucian. She is destined to rule at my side, whether she wants to or not. As the Emperor raised his hand to strike, California felt the power inside her surge again. This time, it was different. This time, it wasn't just the Emperor's magic. It was her magic, the magic that had been locked away inside her for centuries. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and the cavern shook violently. The portal opened wide, and for the first time, California understood the full scope of her power. The Vampire Emperor snarled as the magic ripped through the air, pulling him back toward the portal. Lucian watched in awe and terror as California's power reached its peak. With a single wave of her hand, the Emperor was pulled back into the portal, his screams echoing as he vanished into the dark abyss. But California wasn't done yet. The portal surged with raw energy, and she struggled to contain it. The ground trembled beneath them, and the air crackled with magic. Lucian, she cried, her voice shaking. I don't know how long I can hold this. Lucian rushed to her side, his hand on her arm, his eyes filled with love and fear. You're stronger than you know, California. We can end this together. But as the portal began to collapse, a final twisted laugh echoed from within. The Vampire Emperor's voice was faint, but it carried a terrible promise. It is not over, Lucian. I will return. Just as the portal began to close, a shadow, a figure emerged from the darkness, worse than the Emperor. A new force. The figure spoke, his voice cold and commanding. You thought you had won? This is just the beginning. Before Lucian could react, the shadow figure vanished into the darkness, leaving them with nothing but the devastating realization that their fight was far from over. The earth beneath their feet trembled, the very air crackling with a force that seemed to tear apart reality itself. California's power surged again, her hands trembling with the weight of the magic she had just unleashed. Lucian reached out, but she pulled away from him, her eyes glowing with a fiery red intensity that reflected the raging storm inside her. What was that? She whispered, breathless, her voice laced with fear and confusion. Who was that? The shadow figure, its eyes burning like coals, had disappeared, leaving them in a silence so deafening that even the echoes of battle seemed far away. But that silence didn't bring peace. It brought dread. The Vampire Emperor was gone, but something darker had stepped into his place. Lucian's eyes narrowed as he scanned the shifting shadows around them. I don't know, but whoever they are, they're not someone we can ignore. California's hands still glowed with dark power. The Vampire Emperor's curse may have been halted, but the battle was far from over. The portal had closed, but the cracks in the world had only begun to form. We can't stay here, Lucian said, his voice strained. Not after what just happened. We need to get out of the cavern before it's too late. But before they could move, a voice echoed from the depths of the shadows, chilling them to their very bones. You think you can escape me, Lucian? The journey out of the caverns wasn't easy. The moment they had stepped into the dark recesses of the temple, they had crossed into a place where the very fabric of reality had begun to warp. The fight to stop the Vampire Emperor had been grueling, but the appearance of the mysterious figure, The shadow that had threatened their victory had changed everything. As Lucian and California moved through the cave system, the tension between them grew. California's newly awakened power seemed to pulse through the very air, leaving the atmosphere thick with uncertainty. Lucian had always known she was special, but now, more than ever, he feared the immense potential she held. The portal she had unleashed, the ancient magic coursing through her veins, it was clear she was no longer just the woman he loved. She was becoming something else. "We don't have much time," California said softly, her gaze distant as they walked through the dark tunnels. "Whatever that figure was, it's not over. I feel its presence." Lucian nodded, his jaw clenched. "I know, but we have to move. If we don't, the danger will consume us both." But the deeper they went, the more the feeling of being hunted crept up on them. They weren't alone. The shadow figure had been a warning, but there were other forces at play. Forces that had been awakened by California's power, forces that didn't care about the vampire emperor or the mortal world. They wanted one thing: control. They reached the mouth of the cavern just as the sun began to set, casting an eerie glow across the sky. The dense forest stretched out before them, but even in the fading light, Lucian could see the figures emerging from the shadows. They weren't vampires. They weren't even human. The shadow figure had been just the beginning. Now, the true enemy had revealed itself. An ancient order, the keepers of the bloodline, a group older than the vampires themselves. Their role had always been to ensure that the world of humans and vampires stayed separate. And now, they had come to finish what the vampire emperor started. "They are the ones who control the portal," Lucian muttered, a curse falling from his lips. "The keepers. They've been waiting for this moment. They'll stop at nothing to control the magic California possesses." The leader of the keepers stepped forward, his cloak billowing around him as if caught in an unseen wind. His eyes glowed with the same dark energy that California had unleashed, and his voice was filled with an ancient power that shook the very ground beneath them. "You are a fool, Lucian," the keeper said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Did you really think you could defy the ancient laws of the world? The vampire emperor's bloodline is but a shadow of the true power that lies beneath." California stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "I'm not some pawn to be used," she declared, her voice fierce with the power flowing through her. "I will stop you." The keeper smiled darkly. "You cannot stop what is already in motion, child. The world will fall, and you will be the one who brings it to its knees." Lucian moved to step in front of her, but California held out her hand, stopping him. "I'll face him alone. This is my fight." The keeper raised his hand, and the ground beneath their feet cracked open, as if the earth itself was splitting. Dark tendrils of magic spiraled toward California, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she raised her own hand, the flames in her eyes growing brighter as she summoned the power within her. "I am no longer afraid of you," she said, her voice full of determination. The air shimmered with energy as she summoned the full extent of her power, pushing back against the keeper's dark magic. The battle between them escalated. Lucian fought beside her, his fangs bared as he tore through the keeper's minions. But California was the center of the storm, her power clashing with the keeper's ancient magic, the very fabric of reality distorting around them. "You cannot defeat me," the keeper snarled, his face twisted in rage. "I am beyond you." But California's power surged again. With a single devastating wave, she shattered the keeper's shield. The cavern trembled as the portal to the Emperor's realm flickered in and out, the dark energy threatening to consume them all. "Lucian!" California cried out, her voice cracking. "We have to stop this now, before it's too late." The air was thick with the intensity of their fight, but as California's magic collided with the keeper's dark forces, something began to change. A crack formed in the very sky above them, and from the rift a voice echoed, low and menacing, yet strangely familiar. "I told you, Lucian, you cannot escape me." It was the vampire emperor, alive, stronger than ever. The portal, once closing, opened wide once again, and the dark forces rushed forward, enveloping the world in shadows. California's power was now the key to both salvation and destruction. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, she was fighting to stop the end of the world. "You must let me in," the vampire emperor's voice boomed, his power consuming everything in its path. Only I can save you, California. Only I can make you whole. California's eyes flashed with a mix of fear and determination. I won't be your weapon, she screamed. I am my own. But just as she spoke those words, a new force emerged from the shadows, a figure tall and cloaked in black, its eyes glowing with ancient power. It is time. The final battle was upon them. California's power, unleashed in full force, clashed against the vampire emperor's dark magic. Lucian fought beside her, but the tide of battle was shifting. The vampire emperor was too powerful, and the keepers were now joined by the shadow figure who had watched them since the beginning. Everything was falling apart. The world was on the edge of destruction. But in the chaos, California's power reached its peak. With a scream of defiance, she tore open the rift once again, pulling the vampire emperor toward her. The shadow figure lunged, but it was too late. California's power was now so great that it consumed them all, pulling them into the abyss. The vampire emperor's last words echoed in the void. It is never over, California. As the light from California's power faded, the world fell silent. Lucian reached out, his heart racing as he looked around. California was gone, pulled into the rift. The vampire emperor was defeated, but something else had been awakened. A new force, a new threat, had just begun to reveal itself. And Lucian was left with only one question. Is it too late to save her?